Clothing to workplace and movement, under siege and culture of impunity reigns supreme. Death of freedom of press. The claim of Dr. Yunus to uphold freedom of press emerged out as biggest hoax in 6 months, as not only journalists are suppressed with meticulous design of false lawsuits, arbitrary arrests, unlawful incarceration, but also a record number of headquarters of media outlets came under attacks. Since August 5th, offices of at least 19 media outlets are torched and vandalized, highest since the country's history, according to DW Bangla Service. Mass arrests and arbitrary detention, brutal crackdown. At least 13,540 people were subjected to mass arrests and arbitrary detention from August 2024 till January 2025. In 20 days of February, at least 12,500 were detained in political cases. No justice in court. Victims of mass arrests denied of legal rights. Reports reveal critics of Yunus regime, who have been subjected to mass arrests, were attacked inside court premises on a regular basis. Denial of academic rights of students. Over the space of last 6 months, tens of thousands of students who are opposed to Yunus and his allies were attacked inside campuses, even barred from attending examinations, denied of academic rights, and their certificates have been cancelled by university authorities. Only because of political belief or alignment with Awami League's student wing, scores of students were murdered, abducted from their home, and even thrown behind the bars. Now the questions over Yunus gaining undue privileges to expand business empire. How Dr. Yunus assured the world and the nation of reform scheme where inclusivity and equality, let alone fundamental human rights, would be upheld. All these tall claims were made during a speech by Yunus on August 8th upon his return to Bangladesh before taking oath as interim head without winning any election. And from UN to other international rights bodies also backed Yunus regime and the quest for so-called reform process unanimously. International human rights activists, organizations, politicians, lawyers, journalists raised their concern from the very beginning, but Yunus's interim government didn't pay attention to this concern.
Given the current instability in Bangladesh and since the departure of the former Prime Minister in August, this is a moment of deep concern. Many governments are condemning the violence and calling for peace and law and order to be restored.
But 7 months under the reign, a reality check reveals just the opposite scenario, with law and order when totally collapsed, while the judiciary and law enforcement have been totally weaponized. Mob rule has become the rule, with lynching, communal violence, alongside other acts of terror like arson, looting, rape, curb on freedom of movement for women and girls roiled the nation. Let's take a look at how rights abuses exacerbated in the country, extrajudicial killing and custodial death by law enforcement. Since August 5th, at the behest of Bangladesh Army, joint forces have been deployed. Troops are also empowered with magistracy power and following our monthly status of killing under law enforcement. Atrocities against minorities.
We have a responsibility because we enable Bangladesh to be free and independent. Now, whatever the change of government has been in Bangladesh, it cannot be acceptable that religious minorities are persecuted in this way.
Attacks on followers of Sufis and shrines. Islamists inciting violence against minorities, in stark contrast to government's narrative on ruling out communal line over attacks against minorities. BBC journalist laid bare how Islamists, released after August 5th, are inciting ongoing spate of violence, targeting all minority communities including Hindus. 2 episodes in BBC radio service brings to light the stark involvement of Islamists in fomenting attacks against minorities. Yunus's sweeping indemnity for mass killing of cops, citizens, and violent attacks on police stations by loyalists. In contrast to the pledge to ensure justice, an order issued on October 14, 2024 by Yunus reads, "Students and citizens who put forth all efforts to make this uprising successful will not face prosecution, arrest, or harassment for their acts between July 15th and August 8th. Emboldened at the indemnity, advocates of Yunus regime, radical Islamists and coordinators from student against discrimination platforms publicly glorified the killing spree of cops and planned destruction of key public offices as part of a violent campaign to bring down Awami League."
যদি মেট্রো রেলে আগুন না দেওয়া হতো, যদি পুলিশদেরকে না মারা হতো, তাহলে বিপ্লবটা এত সহজেই অর্জিত হতো না। কিংবা
পুলিশের ফায়ারিং একটু কম লাগছে, সিভিলিয়ান প্লেসে হাতের 7.62 আপনারা নিয়ে দেখছেন।
বৈষম্য বিরোধী আন্দোলনে সিরাজগঞ্জের এনায়েতপুরে যদি 15 জন পুলিশ নিহত না হতো, বাংলাদেশের পুলিশের মেরুদণ্ড থাকতো না।
Despite such public admission of killing, the decree justifying no legal action against violence perpetrated by supporters of Yunus has been likened by rights activists as an act of widespread indemnity granted for perpetrators who killed police, minorities, citizens affiliated with Awami League, aimed to bring Yunus in power and solidify his grip on power. No justice for killing of at least 318 people under Yunus regime. Ayin O Shalish Kendro, a leading human rights organization, reported. Massacre of Awami League activists. At least 171 citizens were reportedly killed in form of lynching, arson, and other forms of violence. According to accounts of family members, tens of thousands of party activists and leaders in almost each unit of 4,573 union in all the 64 districts across the country subjected to physical attacks, and their houses and business were looted and vandalized. Hundreds of activists are feared, killed as their whereabouts are unknown for months. Due to impunity for killing of Awami League leaders and activists, there has been no let-up in the extrajudicial killing spree even after 6 months. Rather, the cycle of vengeance and erosion of rights only compounded. Violence against women. Safety of female population, from clothing to workplace and movement, under siege and culture of impunity, reigns supreme. Death of freedom of press. The claim of Dr. Yunus to uphold freedom of press emerged out as biggest hoax in 6 months, as not only journalists are suppressed with meticulous design of false lawsuits, arbitrary arrests, unlawful incarceration, but also a record number of headquarters of media outlets came under attacks. Since August 5th, offices of at least 19 media outlets are torched and vandalized, highest since the country's history, according to DW Bangla Service. Mass arrests and arbitrary detention, brutal crackdown. At least 13,540 people were subjected to mass arrests and arbitrary detention from August 2024 till January 2025. In 20 days of February, at least 12,500 were detained in political cases. No justice in court. Victims of mass arrests denied of legal rights. Reports reveal critics of Yunus regime, who have been subjected to mass arrests, were attacked inside court premises on a regular basis. Denial of academic rights of students. Over the space of last 6 months, tens of thousands of students who are opposed to Yunus and his allies were attacked inside campuses, even barred from attending examinations, denied of academic rights, and their certificates have been cancelled by university authorities. Only because of political belief or alignment with Awami League's student wing, scores of students were murdered, abducted from their home, and even thrown behind the bars. Now the questions over Yunus gaining undue privileges to expand business empire. How Dr. Yunus assured the world and the nation of reform scheme where inclusivity and equality, let alone fundamental human rights, would be upheld. All these tall claims were made during a speech by Yunus on August 8th upon his return to Bangladesh before taking oath as interim head without winning any election. And from UN to other international rights bodies also backed Yunus' regime and the quest for so-called reform process unanimously. International human rights activists, organizations, politicians, lawyers, journalists raised how Dr. Yunus assured the world and the nation of reform scheme where inclusivity and equality, let alone fundamental human rights, would be upheld. All these tall claims were made during a speech by Yunus on August 8th upon his return to Bangladesh before taking oath as interim head without winning any election. And from UN to other international rights bodies also backed Yunus' regime and the quest for so-called reform process unanimously. International human rights activists, organizations, politicians, lawyers, journalists raised their concern from the very beginning, but Yunus's interim government didn't pay attention to this concern.
Given the current instability in Bangladesh and since the departure of the former Prime Minister in August, this is a moment of deep concern. Many governments are condemning the violence and calling for peace and law and order to be restored.
But 7 months under the reign, a reality check reveals just the opposite scenario, with law and order when totally collapsed, while the judiciary and law enforcement have been totally weaponized. Mob rule has become the rule, with lynching, communal violence, alongside other acts of terror like arson, looting, rape, curb on freedom of movement for women and girls roiled the nation. Let's take a look at how rights abuses exacerbated in the country, extrajudicial killing and custodial death by law enforcement. Since August 5th, at the behest of Bangladesh Army, joint forces have been deployed. Troops are also empowered with magistracy power and following our monthly status of killing under law enforcement. Atrocities against minorities.
We have a responsibility because we enable Bangladesh to be free and independent. Now, whatever the change of government has been in Bangladesh, it cannot be acceptable that religious minorities are persecuted in this way.
Attacks on followers of Sufis and shrines, Islamists inciting violence against minorities, in stark contrast to government's narrative on ruling out communal line over attacks against minorities. BBC journalist laid bare how Islam.
Some have come from very far, others from the region, UK, Germany, the Netherlands, but we're extremely happy to be able to organize this event today. On behalf of Global Human Rights Defense, I would like to welcome all of you to this international conference on blasphemy allegations, mob violence, and the protection of religious minorities in Bangladesh. We proudly present an international selection of esteemed speakers on these urgent issues, not only related to Bangladesh, but also to Pakistan and indeed to the wider region. The impact of violence in Bangladesh in the last 18 months should be a cause for international concern. The international community, however, is concerned with the war with Russia and Ukraine, Israeli violence in Gaza, and statements made by the American president related to Greenland and Venezuela, for instance, and other parts of the Western Hemisphere. Those issues definitely need attention, but the situation in Bangladesh should not be overlooked. Today, we will discuss the international legal obligations, state responsibility, and the accountability in relation to the violence in Bangladesh. Global Human Rights Defense is extremely happy to have Dr. Anthony Holslag as the keynote speaker of this conference. Mr. Holslag is involved in the work of the International Association of Genocide Scholars. I had the privilege to work with Dr. Holslag in field research in Iraq and Bangladesh in recent years. In our first panel, we will focus on the legal and human rights framework, how to address the law enforcement challenges, and how can access to justice be guaranteed for minorities. These are some of the questions that will be dealt with in our first panel. I will introduce the speakers to you before we begin the panel. We have 3 panel debates, and there will be plenty of time for everyone present to contribute to the debate. In the second panel, we will pay attention to the role of the media. In every war, truth is the first victim of war. Today, more than ever before, we see the importance of controlling the media, especially the so-called social media. This means that not only professional journalists, but also civil society and human rights defenders have become active players in conflicts. We will listen to testimonies and to case studies. The third panel will deal with the international responses and policy options. Speakers will explore the possible roles of the United Nations and the European Union. Options such as diplomacy, international monitoring, and sanctions will be part of the debate. What is desirable and what is effective? Around 2 o'clock, we will have a longer coffee break of about 45 minutes with high tea. After the second panel, we will have a short break of only 15 minutes. May I please ask you to turn off your telephones, your cell phones, so that we can concentrate on the debate. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce to you our keynote speaker, Dr. Anthony Holslag. Mr. Holslag is a Dutch scientist and novelist specialized in anthropology and genocide studies. He is an expert on state radicalization, cultural destruction, and the mechanisms that lead to genocide. He published extensively on the Armenian genocide. Previously, Mr. Holslag advised the European Union on radicalization and extremism and worked as a lecturer at the Free University in Amsterdam. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Anthony Holslag.
Before I start, I would like to thank Global Human Rights Defense for this very important seminar conference today. And it's an honor to do the opening address. the keynote address. It was a challenge, I have to admit, and what I will try to do this afternoon is address the importance, the relation between blasphemy laws, communal violence, and how we can look at it from the perspective of genocide studies. But before I continue, I want to rewind a bit until 5 days ago, where the chief advisor, Yunus, of the interim government stated that in the last few years, of the 645 communal crimes that were committed, only 71 were ethnic violence. The others were criminal acts, and among those acts were conflicts among neighbors, political violence, and sexual violence. This argument of Yunus is countered by many the international organizations. Among, for example, in July 2025, the United States Commission of International Religious Freedom that stated that the freedom of religious conditions in Bangladesh was in decline. It's also countered by a report by Genocide Watch, which published extensively on the Chittagong Hill Tract and the Chuma people, the 12 different ethnic groups that live among there. They call the persecution among those people, for example, the Chakma, the Marma, as genocide. It's also countered by ethnic violence in the recent past, and I can only mention a few. For example, the violence in October 2021, where 500 rioters demolished 80 shrines and killed 2 people in the city of Kumila. This was caused by a depiction of the Quran kneeling in front of a Hindu statue. There was also violence in the 29th of March, where Hindu communities were attacked. The 28th of July, where 15 to 20 Hindu homes were burned. Or in the 18th of December of late, where Tipu Chandra Das was killed and murdered because he made remarks about the Islam. So how can we look at this puzzle? How can we look at it from genocide studies? And before I'm going to try to give an answer on that, I want to take a sidestep and concentrate what genocide actually means. Of course, we know that genocide means the persecution of national, ethnic, racial, and religious groups. But genocide entails much more than that. Genocide entails the destruction of property, destruction of identity indicators, destruction of cultural elements on all levels. It's not just the persecution of killing of people, it's the destruction of identity. In that sense, genocide differs from crimes against humanity, that its sole aim is the destruction of an identifiable group, and in the end, also the physical destruction of this group. That said, genocide scholars and also genocide lawyers, prosecutors are quite careful in using genocide in all cases. And that has to do with the fact that genocide is sometimes misused, and there's also a political sensitivity to the word attached of genocide. Not all violence is genocidal. That said, if we look at genocide, we see in these mechanisms what starts genocide, what we call a process of othering. In this process, we create an other, and we differentiate and distance ourselves from the other, and even dehumanize, the other. But like I stated, not all process of othering is necessarily genocidal. So how can we look at this? Because if we want to attach the process of othering, what does it more entail? What does have to happen if we can call it genocidal? Well, first of all, there should be a machinery of violence. It should be organized. And if we look at genocide, then often the violence is relatively short. If we look at Rwanda, for example, or if we look at the Holocaust, it's relatively short, organized, the violence. Communal violence is different in nature. It's often a burst of violence, spontaneous, and short-lived. So how can we attach communal violence from that angle to genocidal violence? And I came with a thought-provoking, I hope at least, a thought-provoking analysis on this, which includes the importance of central government, local government, identity politics, and the importance of blasphemy laws. And what I will argue here today is that blasphemy laws has a way to make genocidal violence invisible. It cloaks the intent of the violence. And in order to explain this, I have to go back to a study that was done in 1999 by Levine. Levine argued that especially in the Chittagong Hill tracts, where there is a close and thick ethnic diversity, the government has not much influence in the local government. Because of this, there starts to become an atmosphere and a mechanisms of impunity. The blasphemy laws gives this impunity legal value, a legal dimension. So we can attach that the central government is what we sometimes consider a weak state, does not really has that much influence as it should have, especially not after the monsoon revolution in these thick populated diversity, ethnic diversity provinces, where the local government has a lot more to say. At the same time, these blasphemy laws can be used to make the othering and the process of othering legal. It gives it a legal argument. And by doing so, it actually cloaks the violence. And Levine comes henceforth with a very interesting terminology. What he calls the violence that happens, especially in these provinces, he calls it creeping genocide. And what does he mean by creeping genocide? Creeping genocide is genocide that does not occur that mechanically, does not occur in a machinery, does not occur as much organized. It takes a very long breath. It's a form of genocide where ethnic groups are persecuted, are killed, where identity markers are destroyed, but in a very slow process, in moments of violence that disappears, that comes and goes. That's what we consider creeping genocide. And these blasphemy laws gives these moments of violence strength, gives an excuse, a legal bounded excuse. So this is a very interesting and also what Levine says, a very peculiar and unique element of the genocide that occurs, or the genocide that occurs in these provinces. And I want you to think about that. I want you to think about how this violence strengthens itself and how the blasphemy laws gives it an excuse to do so. That said, because I only had 10 minutes, looking at the elections coming on the 12th of February, Junus also stated that there will be full accountability of the violence occurrence that happened. I hope it will. Because Not giving accountability, not doing so, strengthens the sense of impunity in those areas, and henceforth continues this phenomenon called creeping genocide. I also want to make another statement. Hopefully we can discuss that later in the panels, is the role of the international community in this, and especially the role of Pakistan in these areas, because local politics can never be seen outside geopolitics and international politics. And what we have seen in the last few years is a call to make the blasphemy laws more urgent, stricter, and even use the blasphemy laws in Pakistan, 295C, as an example in Bangladesh. Doing so, if we take into account this element of creeping genocide, will only strengthen and will only cause more persecution of ethnic minorities in Bangladesh. Thank you.
We now would like to open the floor for comments, questions. I had one esteemed member of our audience, an historian, who was asked to give a short reaction on the keynote speech. What Mr. Holstar said was related to the blasphemy laws giving a legal basis to the process of authoring impunity. Impunity is part of the genocidal process. You being an historian and amongst others, could you relate that to what has happened in the past in this region?
Thank you, Harry. Should I stand up? Okay. Face the cameras. Thank you very much. My goodness, where does one start? I'm going to try and keep it pithy and to the point so that we get the maximum amount of benefit from this gathering. As you were speaking, a few thoughts came to my mind. Can I just ask, in this room, how many people believe in the primacy of freedom of religion and belief? Could you just raise your hands? Okay, therein lies the problem. The civilization that we're talking about, the civilization in Bharat, has a higher value system. It places freedom of thought, expression, and speech above freedom of identifiable belief systems. So the right to be able to speak, the right to be able to question is enshrined in ancient scriptures, Natya Shastra. And one of the difficulties that we have, I'm going to put a simple question to you. Why should I, as an identifiable Hindu, give credence and freedom of religion and belief to an ideology which believes in my eradication? So as a Hindu, why should I give any respect or accord or agreement or support to an ideology which is defined by the erasure of my civilization?
Oh, very good question.
And I'd like to say that that lies at the heart of the conflict which the European identity group actually has to resolve.
Thank you very much. It's a very tough question, which is very relevant even for the politics today in Europe, when we're talking about, for instance, the position of the Islam in Europe. It's a very relevant question, and I'm sure it's going to be underlying the debates that we'll have today. Thank you very much for that point of view. Is there anyone else who would like to ask a question to Mr. Holstar or to make a remark about what he described as, what was the term, creeping genocide, or any other part of his contribution? Yes, we have someone there. I'll give you the mic, please. Return it to me voluntarily.
And I'll keep it very short. So you talked about genocide. Which community do you think is being targeted at this stage?
Well, at this stage, if I look at the international organizations like Genocide Watch, they specifically mention the Chittagong Hill tracts and the minorities, what is it, the junta minorities living there. they mention that specifically, and it also has to do with the many forms of violence that takes place there, like the destruction of religious shrines, land grabs, and also, which is very important, which I didn't really discuss or forget to discuss, is the forced conversions of the, let me double check this, the shakma. And that is very significant, because if you look at the genocide definition, in forced conversions actually encapsulated in there.
Thank you very much. Anyone else who would like to take the floor? Yes, we have a question or remark back here. I'll give you the mic.
Hello, my name is Shailesh Bire. I do want to ask you about the Dutch media and the Dutch politician, because from my organization and organization related to me, to our society, they reply to us that it is not targeted to Hindus, or it is more like Awami League and the other parties that are against Awami League, and they put it a political swing to it. What is your take on that?
Well, that's a very good question. Of course, I cannot speak for the Dutch government or the Dutch media, but I think that you definitely see, especially in the provinces which I mentioned, you definitely see mostly persecution on ethnic minorities like Hindus and Buddhists, and also Christians, by the way. But there's also, for example, and I hope I pronounce this correctly, a persecution on the Ahmadi Muslims, you know, and we shouldn't forget that either. So it's not just Hindus, Buddhists, and Christians, also Muslims get persecuted in this case. And what scared me when I really looked at this case is that there were in the last decennia a few times where political parties wanted to sharpen the blasphemy laws, and took Pakistan as example. And I think that's a very dangerous development, because I think then you will start to see more persecution on many, many different groups at the same time. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think organizations like this can play a pivotal role in that, and also, you know, grassroots movements, and also by publishing and by publishing reports and papers and articles. Those are all ways to counter that. But yeah, it's a process. Yeah.
Okay, final question in this round, Mr. Sital.
Yes. Thank you, Professor Hosler. Human rights, we are always too late, because we are always fighting from behind. Now my question is, as a human rights organization, even the new government is there, how we can file a case that we know that is genocide, and what is the procedure to start with it?
You mean the genocide and the creeping genocide?
Yes.
I mentioned, yeah. Well, the thing is, what you also have to be aware of, that the creeping genocide, not like I stated, within genocide studies, we're quite careful in using the terminology. And even though I use the research of Levine in this case, I do not think that all genocide scholars would agree with that terminology. So I want to make that point first. So that's very important. I think one of the problems in human rights cases and cases of genocide, and that's integrated in the scientific community, is always after the fact. And that makes it quite hard. So if you really want to embroil it, you really want to make a statement, and you really, I think what you have to do is really make case studies at the moment. Case studies, fact-find missions, get the facts. Because as I started with the report of Yunus 5 days ago, that's not fact. That's not fact-checking. That's fiction. You know, 71 cases is only communal violence. So I think you have to start with the facts, make cases, give the reports, have influence from that point on political organizations. I hope I answered your question, Titus.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for your keynote speech, ladies and gentlemen.
Tough question, tough question.
We'll hear more from Dr. Holslag in the third panel. Oh, I was about to close this round. There'll be enough opportunity for you to bring your remarks or ask your questions. Thank you very much, Dr. Holslag. We will now move to the first panel. Could I please invite to join in the first panel, Paulo Casaca. Please have the first chair, Dr. Habibi Milad. And the third speaker, Priyashit Debsarkar. Please, if you would use the first three seats, and I will give a short introduction on your backgrounds. Mr. Casaca is founder and executive director of the South Asia Democratic Forum and Arch Humankind. He was a member of the European Parliament for 10 years, from 1999 until 2009, and is former member of regional and national parliaments. Mr. Casaca is the author of multiple books and reports on economics and international politics, with extensive experience in EU and international policymaking. Welcome, Mr. Casaca. Then Dr. Habibi Milad. Dr. Milad is a professor of cardiac surgery. Let's hope we don't need that today. Trained in Bangladesh, the UK, Europe, and at Harvard Medical School. For 10 years, from 2014 until 2024, he served as a member of the Bangladesh Parliament. Mr. Milad is a strong advocate for universal health coverage and empowerment of women and youth. He's involved in public health initiatives at national and international levels, including the fight against drug abuse and child marriage. Welcome, Dr. Milad. Then finally, Priyashit Debsarkar. He is the author of geopolitical analyst. He's an author and geopolitical analyst based in London, specializing in international relations and historical conflicts. He has published multiple books with a focus on East Pakistan and the 1999 Kargil War, and is best known for The Last Raya of West Pakistan. He's also a regular columnist for leading English and Bengali newspapers across Canada, the UK, Switzerland, India, Bangladesh, and Hong Kong. A warm welcome to you as well. Now, if I could invite the first speaker to take the floor, we'll do the three speakers in a row and then have our Q&A and our debate. The floor is yours, sir. If you could please use this microphone.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for this kind invitation to address an issue that is so dear to me. I did write a paper that I made available through the conference organizers that is titled Bangladesh, a New Venue to Totalitarianism. And this expresses what I do think it's more important on what we are seeing in the country. It is a new venue. We had never seen nothing like that. This is really what I stand for. And well, to get there and to see how can such an enormous issue for the whole world. I mean, Bangladesh is one of the biggest countries in the world. It's one of the most important, and if you would trust in what you can see in the media, what you can see from United Nations organizations, well, you would say, well, perhaps even the opposite. I mean, things are going very well. We have a Nobel Peace Prize in charge. He's not only a Nobel Peace Prize, he has a curricula where everything you can imagine is there. I mean, he has been in all politically correct United Nations committees. He said all the political correct things. He is a champion for rights of women, of minorities, of the environment, of the climate, you name it. I mean, so how is it? Well, I would be tempted to say that one point in my CV that is a bit far away because it has more than 40 years was when I did found at the time the Amnesty International group in my island in São Miguel in the Azores. And one of the things, that already at that time was, I thought, it does not make sense, was the idea that human right violation is a human right violation. It's an absolute thing. So we cannot speak in terms of degree of violation. So it is an absolute thing. It is very appealing. Obviously, the death of a person, the torture of a person is a torture of a person in every circumstance. Our humanist culture couldn't allow us to say the opposite. But, well, even regarding genocide, I did accompany very much Iraq. And actually a lot of what was going on there was genocide in multi directions. Because ethnic cleansing is a form of genocide. And you can make ethnic cleansing by making life a bit intolerable for people. For instance, that's what I could see in main Christian towns in the north of Iraq, where there was, you would start, like putting a mosque, a new mosque, in the center of the Christian city, with all the music, all the, it would start like that. Not really shooting people, not necessarily shooting people. And then, of course, the spirit of the blasphemy laws, because the blasphemy laws are a complex, much more than a legal thing. It's an instrument. And of course, what I did see in Iraq, was coming from the sort of harassment that can be more or less violent to pure mass killing. I did see it. I got, I was, in phone conversations in towns with people that were just trying to escape, where, everyone that was not, this case was Sunni Muslims that were absolutely, they were, either they managed to escape or they were murdered on the spot. I saw that, okay. But coming back to this soft sort of ethnic cleansing, can we say that the genocide of Bangladesh 71 is just like any other? I don't think we can. I think it is a tremendous error. I think this historical genocide has a dimension, a violence, and a leitmotif that puts it in history. It's not like all the other ones. It's a novel thing. So to come about an organization, Amnesty International, that I really, I was absolutely fascinated with it over 40 years ago. I wouldn't say the same thing today, not at all. And I'm not focusing specifically on the Amnesty International, because there is much worse than that. I think that what we have seen now in Bangladesh is that for the very first time, we have a dictatorship that is announced by the opposite, complete opposite. You can say, okay, well, Stalin or communists, Soviet communists, well, they did not say we are going to make a dictatorship. Well, not like that, but they did not hide that there was this proletarian dictatorship, and they did not hide a lot of the things, and they did not, they lied a lot, of course. Stalin, the father of the peoples, okay, but there was some grain of truth there. And you can say that about Stalin, can say that about Mussolini, about Hitler, about Mao, about Khomeini. Khomeini is the model that I think is more important to understand what is going on in Bangladesh, because Khomeini, just before he left his Paris asylum, and he was interviewed, well, how is it? Are you really going to make the Islamic state that you promised, because you did. You wrote it 10 years before. I mean, in 71, he did write that he wanted to impose in Iran a government of the Muslim jurisprudence. I mean, the Muslim wise man, if you want. He was clear, but then he said, "Oh no! I mean, I went from freedom and democracy, and I am an old man. Oh, I don't want to have any power. I mean, oh, come on." Okay, of course he lied, but there was some grain of truth. If you look at what happened with Mr. Yunus, I mean, there is not a word about jihad. I mean, Mr. Yunus and, of course, the student movement. I put them all together. Not a word about jihad. Not a single one. And yet, 1.5 years after, I said it right from the start. Obviously, it's going to happen. But now it's done. They are part of the Jamaat-e-Islam electoral list. I mean, what could be more obvious than this? Of course, and allied. I mean, they are not part of it. There are 6, 7, I don't know how many members. So, no, I mean, how did it come there? I mean, it started with the Nobel Peace Prize, which to me, as an economist, I mean, it's one of the most absurd things I've ever seen in my life, because he invented microcredit. I mean, come on. That's one of the things that marked more my infancy. I mean, much before he spoke about it. I mean, I do remember as a 5, 6 years old child, how was it? My mother's microcredit. I mean, Mr. Yunus invented it. Come on. I mean, the only thing he did was to make of it a higher institutionalized instrument that it was not. It was very informal everywhere. I mean, if Portugal is my country, I mean, even in Europe, it was like that. I mean, and if you read, as an economist, reading the nomination, it's unbelievable that a committee like the Nobel Peace Prize Committee can write a thing like that. I mean, you need to ignore everything that thousands of years of history of credit are ignored there. I mean, it's written by someone that thinks that the universe is the normal, actual banking rules and knows nothing about the past, fundamentally. But it went on, you know. In 2006, October, he got the prize. In January, the military tried to impose him as prime minister. It didn't work out because he thought about it. He tried to make a party. He promised, and he said, the conditions are not ripe. They actually used what I call the two ladies theory. I mean, the first time I was in Bangladesh, which was in 2012, I'm about to finish, and then I will be completing, you know, because of course, otherwise I would not finish in any time soon. But I mean, 2012, and Sheikh Hasina had been there already for 3 years, and you know, going from door to think tanks, especially the military and the religious structures, everybody was speaking about, oh, the problem is the two ladies that hate each other. Okay, I mean, at first I found it a bit odd, you know, but then I did understand. I mean, of course, there was a hint of misogyny there, obviously, but fundamentally it meant the problem is the democratic parties that are, of course, not ideal. I mean, whoever thinks about a political party as an ideal instrument is really doesn't know what he thinks about. Of course, they are not ideal. I mean, it's like many people explain, Churchill, namely, they are absolutely awful, the political parties, but they are the least awful thing that man invented up to now. That's reality. So political parties are fundamental. So actually the two ladies, well, never mind about the ladies, but the parties were what was to be defended. And the problem was exactly the religious supremacism and the military structures. It was exactly the opposite. And I think that what we are seeing now is a process that started a long time ago. During this time, from 2007 to 2014, 24, I'm sorry, all this time, we have seen, you know, Mr. Yunus, I don't know, you just go to the net and you see how many nominations he had, how many committees he had, everything, that is the best things in the world. He was there. Okay. Look at these 18 months, what he did. It's nearly the opposite. So this is the message. We are in front of a new sort of totalitarianism that comes, it's Orwell. we have said so many times it's Orwell that now nobody believes, because everything is Orwell. No, even the Soviet Union was not as, it was a caricature, not a caricature of the Soviet Union, as a matter of fact. Not only, Mr. Putin has a point there. He actually, it started with the decline of the English language. He was speaking about his native country, and of course, he referred then to the Soviet Union. Yes, but of course, his novel goes much beyond what the Soviet Union was. But now we have it. The Ministry of Truth. If you are a perfect liar, you are the Minister of Truth. If you are the guy, you are the Minister of Love, and so forth. That's what we are facing now. And this is possible because of the gross failure of the international institutions, of the European Union, of the United States, well, not to mention the United Kingdom, perhaps the worst of them all, and the press. This is the result. And I invite whoever doubts about it, go there. Speak with people, speak with the Bangladeshis and see what your thoughts will be. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this powerful statement, Paolo. Now we would like to hear Dr. Habibi Milat. Sorry, questions and remarks after the three speakers.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting in this conference. I will start from there where Paulo stopped. He said that what Dr. Yunus has done over the last 18 months. I'll start with my hometown. I live in a northern part of the country, and is one of the districts. Bangladesh has 64 districts. So on 4th and 5th August, this government was, I will have all the evidence that 31 people have been killed, and 15 of them are police officers. More than 600 buildings, government offices, and also properties have been vandalized or set on fire for 2 days. And there are many judicial cases where the case has been done, but that criminals have been done, though have been sufferer. Accused were those who they cannot give any, they cannot do any case. Only that they can do is they are accused of that they have done that. After that, if I go there, if you see in Gopalganj on 16th of July, the army killed 5 students, direct shoot, lethal bullet in Gopalganj. 124 MPs, most of them are elderly, 80 plus. They're in the prison last 16, 17, 18 months. They're not even getting bail. If somebody can commit crime, he should be punished. He should, but he has the right to get justice. He had the right to get bail. They're not getting. If you see this one, this is a state of mob violence. There is no rule of law in the country at the moment. And there is no judicial system, or is censored or totally controlled by the Jamaatis, Hizb ut-Tahrirs, and other religious extremists. We need to save the country. The country was promising booming in economy, but the change in August 2024, that to July 2025. You will get all those documents online on globalcdg.org. And if you want, if I have your email address, I can forward it to you. Bangladesh is a secular country. There are 90 to 93% are Muslim. They're very moderate. 7-8% Hindus, Christians, Buddhists, and different religion lives there. But the Jamaat is trying to establish Islam the way they want to say. The other religious people like Muslim, as you mentioned, Ahmadiyya, they're tortured, they're killed. I'll give you the statistics on that. But 185 Sufis shrines have been demolished. If you see the pictures, it's all documented. So the world community, the international community should do something about that. Awami League was on power last 15 years. Again, I'm saying if there any wrongdoing of them, they can be punished, but not the party at all. Party has been banned from any activities by an ordinance with the illegal or illegitimate government, Dr. Yunus's government. Awami League is the biggest and oldest party, 76 years old. It has supporters more than 50% any time in the history. And they are now doing an election without many parties, including Awami League. They don't want to participate in Awami League because of if they participate, they may win and take over the country again as a power. But that's why they have ordinance, by ordinance they did it. They killed 537 Awami League leaders and activists. You can get all the documented evidence here. And is most of them, Dr. Yunus declared indemnity. I'll kill you, you'll be punished for that. But you kill me, you get indemnity. Nothing will happen to you. Twice they gave indemnity in last 18 months. He's a Peace Nobel Prize winner. He did that. But the world community, especially the Western Europe, the United States, they think Dr. Yunus has a big image worldwide. He has 3-0 theory. I don't know what does it mean really, but as Paulo said, that the microcredit was there many years ago. You know, what do you think if you will kill law enforcement authorities? In one day in my hometown, they killed 15 police officers. Countrywide, 44 police officers. All the photos, their identity, everything is here. You can see that. Out of 500 police stations, 480 police station was vandalized, looted, set on fire, and killed police. All the pictures and everything is there. And they looted about 6,000 modern firearms with more than 650,000 bullets, not yet recovered in 18 months. And probably that will be used in the forthcoming election, as we can see the way. Extrajudicial killing in Bangladesh has gone up tremendously as torture of the women, torture of the children, minority communities. You know, in 55 years of history, Bangladesh never has seen in such a scale. This is the wallpaper. In that website, you will get the updated copy. 86 people were killed in the police or custody in that few months. And if you, this book is what in 1 year Dr. Yunus has done to abuse and violate the human rights. This one, the book, if you can have a look. Bangladesh, Yunus and Assault on History. Complete picture of what he has done over the last 18 months. So I will request international community, media, diplomats, to look into that. 200 million people in this country lives. 20 million Awami League supporters are homeless, or they cannot stay at home at the moment because of if they can go back, they will be tortured, they will be extorted, or they will be involved in the mob violence. Women, children, women are banned from paying footballs. Even the Bangladesh Bank, which is the national bank, as you know, the central bank, they said women should wear hijab, otherwise they cannot come to the office. Of course, because of the lot of protest that has been taken away. But that's the way Jamatis and other are infiltrating in everywhere. If we do not act now, it will be too late. It will be impossible to repair. So I will request you all, not only those who are here, you, your friends, your community, please help us. As a person, I'm in the Europe. I will probably survive, but my relatives are suffering at the moment. My friends are suffering. My fellow colleagues are suffering. I need your support. I need your help. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Milad, for your appeal to both this audience and the international community. We will bring that up later, especially with our debate on the role of the media. Now I would like to turn our third and last speaker in this panel, Priyashit Debsarkar. The floor is yours.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for this August panel. I thank the organizers. I thank my fellow panelists and the audience, because we are here for the audience, and those who are joining online as well. A very warm greetings from this August panel. I have got a presentation. Can somebody, yeah, but how is it? Oh, okay, thank you. So I've got two parts to my submission. So first, I will give some historical context, and I think that has already been discussed, but just to put some figures and facts. So the Bangladesh Liberation War, also known as the Bangladesh War of Independence, was, oh, sorry. Yeah, okay. So the Bangladesh Liberation War, also known as the Bangladesh War of Independence, was an armed struggle revolution triggered by the Bengali nationalist and self-determination movement in East Pakistan. The war coincided with the 1971 Bangladesh genocide, which we have already discussed, and resulted in the independence of Bangladesh. And we also need to remember that the population in 1971, 54% of that was Bengali or from East Pakistan. So probably this is the first point in history where the majority percentage of representation of a country decided to break away from the minority. So this is very important, because we always think Pakistan as West Pakistan, but the population representation of the East was much higher compared to the West. And we have some reference points like the 1947, the partition of the Indian subcontinent, 1952 language movement, and the 6-point agenda by Sheikh Mujib, Cyclone Bhola 1970, then the general election. There was a concert for Bangladesh in the Madison Square Gardens. Pandit Ravi Shankar and George Harrison were one of the key movers who actually took the name Bangladesh even before 16 December, that's on 1st of August. Then we have the Mukti Bahini 9-month-old war, refugee crisis, and then eventually surrender of the West. So I just want to go to the next slide, please. And the next slide. It is estimated that almost 30 million Bengali population from East Pakistan were killed or perished. On the night of the Operation Searchlight, almost 50,000 civilians were murdered in the capital Dhaka alone. We have got multiple sites in Khulna and Jallat Khana in Dhaka, where the largest killing fields of the country has been documented. The women and children paid the penultimate price. It is estimated between 200,000 to 400,000 Bengali women were raped, violated by the West Pakistani army and its collaborators during the 9-month-old war. It is, again, an approximate figure of 30,000 of the women committed suicide from the torture and the humiliation by the Pakistani army. Christian missionaries outside Bangladesh and orphanages adopted around 5,000 war babies result from these rapes and violation. and 30 to 40 million citizens of East Pakistan were internally displaced, mostly seeking refuge in India during this 9-month war period. Okay, so next slide, please. International media, again, I have done my research and from credible media sources. So we got the University of Cambridge. You can go online and see Imagining Traitors, the Raped Woman and Sexual Violence during the Bangladesh War 1971. The Guardian, it's got a report of a survivor and the heading is "We Lay Like Corpses in the 1970 Rape Camps." The next slide, please. So if you want to have a read, there are a few very good books which are around. So of course, Gary J. Bass, The Blood Telegram, which is based on Archer Blood's telegram to Washington on the night of the Operation Searchlight. And we have the legendary article by Anthony Mascarenhas on the Sunday Times calling the word genocide, which first brought the horrors of East Pakistan to the Western theater. So again, it is estimated that around 80 to 100,000 regular troops and other members of Auxiliary Association of the East Pakistanis and the Punjabi, basically the West Pakistan Army, they surrendered during they surrendered in 1971, 16 December, and this is the second highest surrender post the Second World War. So we have to keep that in mind as well. It is estimated over 1,100 members of the noted intellectuals, journalists, teachers, physicians, lawyers, writers, and members of the civil society who were the actual brain of East Pakistan were targeted and eliminated before the surrender, resulting in a bankruptcy. So now if we come forward, and I think I'll pick up where Paolo and Dr. Milad has left. So next slide, please. So present day, so this is a research article which has been published in Juster, and basically the synopsis is that from January to May 2025, Bangladesh has witnessed a rise in religious extremism worsened by ongoing political instability. There is mob violence targeting those who are seen un-Islamic, signals an effective counter-radicalization. There is growing concern about Bangladeshi youth being radicalized, including online and transnational extremist groups like the TTP, which is the Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, and Hizb ut-Tahrir. Next slide, please. Okay, so governance and international concerns. Inability of the state to guarantee security through institutional means, including neutral policing and intelligence-led protection. I think policing, Dr. Milad has already mentioned. Erosion of public confidence in law enforcement agencies whose role is to provide equal protection under the law, so everybody is treated equally and fairly. A policy response driven by fear management than the risk in reduction, which may actually exacerbate the insecurity rather than resolve it. Implications of rule of law and electoral integrity. The political competition risk becoming coercive rather than democratic. Armed intimidation can suppress voter participation, because we already know that the Awami League has now been excluded from the upcoming elections. Electoral processes may lose credibility domestically and internationally. Hence, for a country approaching electoral phase, such a measure are incompatible with international standards for a free, fair, and inclusive, peaceful election process. We have to also remember Bangladesh is a signatory to numerous international instruments like the Rome Statute, the UN conventions, and arbitrary treaties like New York and ISSID. Next slide, please. So there has been media reports, so we can definitely cite examples of Bloomberg, BBC, then the Organization of Human Rights in Oxford University, who has reported the abuse and the escalation of violence in Bangladesh. So these are few of the examples. There's quite a lot, but I could only fit these for the moment. Could you go to the next slide, please? And what are the risks to the civilian society? So Bangladesh historically has maintained strict controls on civilian firearms. again, a point which has been mentioned by Dr. Milat, and with the police stations being looted and unaccounted firearms and bullet, this poses a very significant risk. Escalation of political violence, the expansion of illegal arms circulation, increased civilian harms through misuse, theft, and retaliation. Accountability and state responsibilities, issuing of firearms to political candidates prior to upcoming elections could be very dangerous. The state is currently unable or unwilling to provide adequate protection through lawful, neutral, and professional security services. This constitutes a failure of duty by the interim government, which particularly accountability rests on the Home Ministry, which is overseeing the policing and internal security situation in Bangladesh. Next slide, please. Okay, so when we now come to the minorities situation currently in Bangladesh, for religious minorities, they have always borne the brunt of these attacks. The violence is the latest chapter in a long history of discrimination, segregation that stretches back to the country's independence and the legacy of colonialization. In the 1947 partition and the bloody liberation war of 1971, which the Hindu, Ahmadi, Buddhist, Christian, LGBT members of the population in particular were targeted. And again, I have quoted very credible media sources like the BBC of the Hindu monk who has been arrested in Chittagong, Al Jazeera, Daily Finland, things like that. So they are very credible media outlets who have covered these stories. Next slide, please. So the Human Rights Congress of Bangladesh minorities under the UDHR and International Bill of Rights, they have come up with a very statistical review. So I'm not going to go into too much details because there's a lot of numbers, but you can see they have established now that there's almost certainly 116 cases of minority deaths and violence in Bangladesh. And you can see from the figure, Dhaka, the capital, is probably one of the main hotbeds, followed by Chittagong, and then other cities like Barishal, Mymensingh, Khulna, Rangpur, things like that. Next slide, please. So we have talked about Deepu Das, I think it has been mentioned, who's not only brutally killed, but then burned. But apart from him, there is a long list of people who have been murdered, like targeted murdered, mob lynching, suspicion of death, custodial death, then state level lethal force, like use of unmatched lethal force, and arson related death. So I have tried to capture as much as possible, but it's not, I did not get the liberty to include everybody's name, but the most horrific ones are listed here. So, and I think the organizers will share the slide so you can look for yourself. The next slide, please. Alignment with international norms. Again, I think we have discussed this, but what the key point is that the UN Human Rights Office has got like a designated office in Dhaka, Bangladesh since July 2025. We from this forum want to ask that what they have done in order to at least condemn and stop the appalling acts of violence and degradation which are being perpetrated against the Hindus and other minorities in Bangladesh. So we want to ask this question, and I think it's a very fair question to ask and get some responses back from that Office of the Human Rights Watch in Bangladesh. Next slide, please. So suppression of press freedom, again, under Dr. Yunus, the acts of violence are listed here, and you can see there's almost 878 documented acts of violence against press and media outlets. And we've got some organizations like the Never Again organization on Shariat Kabir. He has been jailed without charge and again not given bail. Then we got the Telegraph has reported Shamul Datta, again, who was a very reputed journalist who is now in custody in Bangladesh without a charge. Next slide, please. The aggression on press and Bengali culture. So recently we saw two of the very fundamental pillars of Bangladeshi journalism, the Pratham Alo and the Daily Stars. Their offices were ransacked, burned to the ground. And not only that, cultural institutions like Chayanot and Udichi, they stand for pluralistic Bengali culture, irrespective of caste, religion, gender. There, obviously, you can see the musical instruments are also being ransacked. So there is a real threat to the Bengali identity, and it's all been perpetrated under the interim government's watch. Next slide, please. So again, the concluding remarks, some of them have already been covered. So I'd like to just focus on the ones which have not. So ensuring swift actions on deliberately delayed and stalled investigations, especially mob lynching, alleged blasphemy, rumor-driven extrajudicial executions, enforcing that the law as currently there is an undeclared immunity, again, indemnity immunity, which has been awarded to the ruling dispensation who work without any fear of law, including acts of murder, arson, rape, abduction, vandalism, and other atrocities in Bangladesh. So I'll just come to my last slide. And if you look at this slide, so the Jamaat-e-Islami is now contesting 179 seats of the 253. And out of their nomination, not a single one is a woman candidate they have filed. And this is a very stark reality. Imagine if that was to happen in Western Europe, what a hue and cry would be. Just because it is happening in Bangladesh, I think there is an absolute silence. I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. We've just heard three powerful statements about the situation in Bangladesh today, but also related to what happened in 1971. And the question that we have to ask ourselves today is what can we do with the knowledge that we have today? Because in 1971, the world was able to look away. Although the blood telegram, it's mentioned in one of the speeches, the blood telegram was there in 1971. So back then, a part of the world knew what was happening in Bangladesh. But today, everybody knows. And it is a political choice to look away today, to pay more attention to other crises like Ukraine, Russia, like the US, Greenland, like Israel and Gaza. And it is up to us, people involved, either with roots in Bangladesh or with activities in human rights or in politics, to decide what we can do today. And the urgent call that comes from this panel is clear. We cannot morally look away and be aware of what's happening in Bangladesh today and still not pay attention to that. So I would like to make that the focus of what we discuss in this first panel. And I've seen three contributions that come very close to each other. So I would rather go to the floor, with your permission, to the floor and to see what remarks are made there or questions to be asked. There was one lady, yes, who wanted to ask a question to the first speaker. So I'll go to you, Tambir. I'll go to you first, and I'll give the second mic to our guest. So when you have a question or when you make a remark, please also mention the person that you would like to ask a question to, and be a good sport. Don't say, I want all three to answer that question, because then we'll be here in the first panel still at 4 o'clock, and we don't have that much time. So please mention the person that you would like to ask your question to. So Tamberia is going to be the first. I'm going to give you the mic, and could you?
Yes. Good. Thank you. Good afternoon, all. First question is, it's not a question, just a remark that Dr. Yunus did not win Nobel for economical reason or economical background. He had a Nobel Prize on Peace. So it has absolutely nothing to do with economics, microcredit or whatever. And second thing is a question to you. I like to know your opinion. In the whole world, there are political parties, man versus man, women versus women, women versus men, all kind of narratives. But why in Bangladesh, as you are busy with Bangladesh, there were two ladies and always in negative side or in undermined side. Yeah, these two ladies. Why is that? Why is stating like that? In the whole world, like in US and everywhere, men are playing, it's more man world. Sorry for my, I find it that as you mentioned it explicitly, these two ladies in Bangladesh, why is that mindset? That I really want to know from you, why is that mindset? The whole world, the men are playing versus men. Why you have to be so negative that the two ladies can't be there? So that's one thing. Can I go with the second question or? Okay, that one is for Mr. Milad. You told in your speech that Awamu League is the largest and oldest political party in Bangladesh. Then so many when after in 2024 since the moment our ex-prime minister left started all the violation or attack, police stations were looted and all. How come that if they are the largest, what is the power where from other people came on in 1 minute? Or in so quickly, if they're so largest, so popular, so everything, I find the narratives doesn't go together. If you are the popular one, biggest one, how can be that within 5 minutes or 5 days, it turned just in from upside down? Thank you.
Two questions for two of our speakers. Paolo, you first, please.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, I fully agree with both your comments. Exactly. It should not have to do nothing with peace. If he would be awarded a business prize, okay, that could make some sense. Peace prize makes no sense whatsoever. But anyway, the documents are public. You can consult them, and actually there is zero on peace. It's everything on the issue of microcredit, the reason why of his nomination. And I fully agree with you as well on the issue of the two ladies. I think there is a misogynist prejudice there. But, you know, other than this, the issue is that in Bangladesh, of course, you have many parties like in many other places, but the two parties that are more deep-rooted are actually the BNP and you have Awamu League. And at the time, the two ladies were the ones heading. I mean, just one of them passed away very recently, so it has been like that for a very long time. And so it was a way to say, oh, these parties and democracy, this is a problem. You know, that was the underlying message. I did get some time, you know, to understand. But what is absolutely fascinating to me is that this underlying message that was obvious, you know, from the military people in the think tanks and the religious and so on and so on, you would say, oh, we can expect that. But that was the United Nations as well. That was United Nations and the Clintons and whatever you name it, all these people on a very sophisticated way. You know, for you to understand, you would have to go, you know, round and round and round with a lot of a cover up. But in the end, that was it. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Milad.
Thank you. I try to be very brief. First of all, the narrative you said about the two ladies. Bangladesh is male-dominated country, predominantly Muslims, and the Islamic or Muslim extremists trying to create a narrative that women cannot come forward. That's why they did it. You can see, Priyojit already told that out of 300 seats, Jamaat hasn't given nomination to any women. 300 male are competing. The other party, BNP, Bangladesh National Party, they given only 9 out of 300. Bangladesh Awamu League has never given less than 50 seats among 300 seats. Number 2, Awamu League is the oldest because of the party Bangladesh has. His Awamu League is 76 years old. That's why it is oldest. And largest, how can you compare? Because you have to see the result of the election. And there are controversy about the last 3 elections. So I'm not talking about that. But previous election, the last one, 2008, Aumi League got 48.4% vote in, and with the alliance is more than 55%. So that's why it is oldest and largest party. Why Aumi League has to live? Because of from 1971, the defeated Jamaatis, the defeated Pakistanis, they are trying to take over and they're planning for a long time. On the top of that, US aid poured directly 29 million and indirectly 21 million US dollar over the last few years. And also 3rd of August, Volker Turk, the United Nations Human Rights Commissioner, he called Chief of Army Staff and threatened him that if anything goes wrong, we will stop taking UN peacekeeping. We will not take Bangladesh as UN peacekeeping. So they have to bow down at that time. And last thing is that Sheikh Hasina didn't want it any more bloodshed, because what happened, it has happened. Because there are so many, as you know, 700 religious extremists was released from the jail. They broke, all documented, 17 prison in Bangladesh. And they came out with the arms and they started fighting. So keep the democracy, keep the people alive, keep the peace in the country. She left the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We've got a couple of more questions, so I'm going to do 2 questions at the same time. Sir,
Yeah. Yeah, so my question is sort of for Paolo. So there must be some key, I know you've given up on international institutions, but I've got to be optimist. So EU has a trade GSP plus or other sort of mechanisms. There must be a mechanism that can be applied. Maybe if you think optimistically, what can be done?
hold that question. Mic to the gentleman in the back. Second question, 2 questions at the same time. Gentleman in the back, yes, please. Thank you. And then
Good afternoon. I have honor to speaker and respected everyone in these events. I am Mustafa Zaman, President of Netherlands Awami League. It is part of Bangladesh Awami League, led by our PM and party president, Sheikh Hasina. I will not ask any question, but on behalf of the Netherlands Awami League, I would like to submit to your hand a press release from us in the context of human rights violation in Bangladesh. If you allow me, please. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for your question. I did not at all give up on the United Nations. You know that the working group on arbitrary detentions, that, by the way, is under the grip of Walter Turk, who was the most disgracious of the persons on the Bangladesh, made a marvelous document. If you want, it's a sort of judgment on a key arrest by the Bangladeshi authorities. Shahriar Kabir, a very good friend, and I think he is a symbol of human rights and democracy in the country, and secularism. I mean, actually, I do think I've never seen an intellectual as good as he is in terms of secularism. Okay, and this body of the United Nations, they made an absolute clear judgment saying that the detention was arbitrary, that he should be released immediately, that he should be compensated, and that the reasons given to the United Nations for his arrest were outrageous, which they are. Fundamentally was his opinion in a television show, which is an opinion I agree with you, which is a secular opinion. So I did not give up. It's a complex game. I mean, I would say, the issue of the media, I would say the opposite, because I was a child. I mean, I understood nothing about what else hell is Bangladesh. I mean, I did not know, but I did know George Harrison. I did know Joan Baez. And, Ara Krishna, actually, I do not want to offend our Hindu friends, because when I spoke about it, one specific Hindu, he told me, "Wow, it's Ara Krishna. This is this is not serious. This is not serious Hinduism." I'm not getting into there. Okay. But anyway, I mean, they were very shiny. I mean, I did see a lot of Hare Krishna in my country, in Portugal, and so it was one of the first things I paid attention to was to Bangladesh in terms of human rights. It was and now you look at the press. It is outrageous. It goes to the modern silence. It's really a lie. It's a big lie what we have about Bangladesh.
Thank you very much. Next question. Yeah, I have a lot of remarks and questions, but I won't do that. Only focusing on one thing, on two terms that I heard, and that's ideology and blasphemy. Because I think that the very strong factor of all the problems is usually religion. So I'm not going to talk about politics now. Ideology, there was one gentleman over there who talked about ideology being a Hindu and then about the ideology of other religions. And you can't generalize. I mean, the ideology is usually the ideology of a certain group of extremists or people who thinks, and that is in all religions, that the groups usually think that they have the right religion and that in everything concerning religion, they know the right thing, and so they condemn the rest, even if it's within their own religion of Islam, of Christianity, even Buddhists. And there was one Buddhist priest in Myanmar who called himself the Buddhist Hitler, relating to the expulsion of the Rohingyas. So this is about ideology, and then blasphemy. We had in the Netherlands, we had blasphemy law. Now, until recently, because you were not allowed to curse and to use swear words. Now they removed it from the law only a couple of years ago. I don't know exactly the time when they removed it, but not long ago. So the problem is not just the blasphemy laws, but the interpretation of a lot of people, because they abuse the blasphemy laws, accusing people falsely, and usually people of other minorities and other people to accuse them. And then there's the craziness of mobs and people who don't wait for a trial, because they never executed in a country like Pakistan, in Bangladesh, I don't know. The government didn't execute people because of that. The death sentence is never used for blasphemy. It's the people on the street who do it. So my question is, and I wanted to ask it to Dr. Millet, aren't there any movements, in this case in Bangladesh, who are trying to focus on the change of mentality? Because that is the problem. You can go to the United Nations. It's not a problem of the United Nations only. It's the problem is within the country itself, within the groups of people. They have a certain mentality. And are trying to influence each other, to instigate each other to do these things. And I was wondering if there aren't any movements to change this mentality and to focus on this kind of things.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's not a question, it's more or less remarks. We are talking about last 18 months, but minorities are under repression, I would say, for almost 50 years or even more. And it has no government, not a single government, tried to take any drastic actions for them and how they feel. All the governments, including now that Jamaat Islami or whatever is trying to come to power, they're using the minorities as a kind of trump card. that, oh, look, we have a Hindu applicants, or we have always, they don't care what they feel, what they want. No one is taking care of them, just using them as a kind of trump card. 50 years ago, when Bangladesh got independent from Pakistan, we had 30%, among 100% population, 30% minorities. But now, today, we only have 7%. They don't feel safe. What did we do to make them feel safe? And it's like always, if there's something happens in India against the Muslims, spill over in Bangladesh, and then start attacking Hindus or Buddhists or whatever. And not a single government, not a single political party. They use them as a kind of card, or kind of like trying to, oh, okay, stay with us, we'll protect you. But in principle, why they need protection? They are also equal citizen like any other Muslim or whatever the religious identity is. Why they need to be taken care of by you? They are equal citizen like you. And what about that? How do they feel? They don't feel safe. They don't feel like it's their own country. And like rest of the population, they said, oh, they don't love this country, they love India, or they love whatever. But no one asks them what they feel, what they want.
Thank you very much. I did hear a question, so I'm going to ask that to Priyashi. First, Dr. Milad on the first.
Thank you. Thank you for asking that question about the blasphemy and change of mentality. As the nation, Bengali nation, they are secular. They love to live each other with harmonious community, and there is no problem with them. When the religious extremists, the number or percentage is very minimum, but the country like Bangladesh, there are 200 million people lives there. If 1%, that about 2 million. So if they want to create anarchy, it is difficult to stop, not only in Bangladesh, anywhere. But we have to look at that, whether it is state-sponsored or state-patronized, or somebody is patronizing it behind that. We need to find out those people. And it already identified, we know who are they. But as a democratic country, without proof, it is difficult to do anything about them. But still, at the moment, and also you need to look at the statistics. In 55 years of Bangladesh, what happened in 1971 or 85 or 96, and which government was in power in that time. So you need to do that, because the blasphemy and those sort of things has increased over the last 18 months. Even in last 45 years, different government was in power. We heard not many as now we're hearing. So we have to look at that. But yeah, of course, mentality change is an option, but those people are brainwashed. They will not change their mentality. That is the problem. And it is everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So, thank you very much. It's very true and very interesting fact which you have highlighted, and I think it stems from the two-nation theory. And I would concur with the professor here of that genocidal concept of the other. So in the two-nation theory, it was documented, or rather publicized, and then sold, the fact that the Hindus and the Muslims, the two predominantly larger communities, cannot live together, and hence there has to be a two-state solution, rather a three-state. So, and then that concept of the other. So, of course, the minorities have always been targeted or violated. However, I would like to draw your attention to the proportionality and the timeline. So in 18 months, we have seen a phenomenal rise of the attacks, irrespective, again, not only Hindus, Christians, Buddhists, Ahmadis, members of the LGBT community, cultural organizations, as I have mentioned in my slides. And if you then cast that to, let's say, a 10-year or 15-year of previous governments, I think the proportionality logic has to be applied in this instance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, we have two more speakers, and I'd like to close the floor. There is enough opportunity later this afternoon after the coffee break for you to make your remarks. So two speakers to end this session.
Quick question to whomever can answer. Can you confirm, when it comes to mob violence, that there are 0 women participating?
Question, yes. we'll leave that up to the panel for you to ask and answer. Then we'll go to the last question in this session. That's the gentleman in the back. To Mr. Habib, I want to ask you a question. I think not proper name, right? Habib again? Habib Milad. I do have a question to you and to maybe the whole public. During the recognition in some parliaments of the Armenian genocide, the Armenian people left the Greeks and the Kurds alone, because before that, they were also describing, hey, there is genocide to all people. The problem is that when you don't specify a group, as in this case, the Hindus that are like 80% of the victims, whether 1981 or now, then you will not have recognition of genocide. What is your thinking about that? Because I do think that in all your three speeches, the focus was with minorities, but you have to specify the biggest victim of that. Maybe that's the question for our genocide scientist, Dr. Holslag. I would like to refer that question to Mr. Holslag, but for the first question, Dr.
The answer is yes. It's not you can see the picture of a lady here. So I read out. She is Musammat Asma Khatun. Husband's name is Abdul Qadir, and her address is Moniram Bari, Muktagacha, Mymensingh, Bangladesh. And she was killed on 5th of August, 2024.
That was another question. The aggressors, the mob, within the mob, there were women within the mob.
Yes. And we have seen every week, one or two, every week, they are involved in that as well. And what they're doing is they're not involving with the mob. They are also involving in extortion. They put their photo or videos in the social media. They're a leader, they can do anything, whatever they want, because there is no rule of law in the country. And they go to the businessman, they go to the opposition political leader, ask for money, otherwise they give threat for giving murder cases or fabricated cases. So that's why they are torturing the people in different ways. The percentage I say, probably the total, those who created mob, 15% to 10% are women. Even when the Bangabandhu Museum, the birthplace of Bangladesh's independence, that was bulldozed and set on fire. The ladies, few ladies were leading the mob. And last few weeks ago, when the Bangladeshi #1 newspaper, the Daily Pratham Alo, and #1 most circulated English newspaper, the Daily Star, if you see, that was in 18th of last month, 18th of December. If you go to the newspaper, you will see ladies are leading, hijabis are leading. So yes, that is happening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Final question to Dr. Holslag.
Yeah, about the Armenian genocide. First of all, it's not been recognized. So let's get that straight. It's not been recognized. And also, genocides are very, very messy. What I mean by that is that if you look at what happened in the Ottoman Empire, it wasn't only the Armenians. You had Syrians, Armenians were also a victim. And if you look at, for example, the Holocaust, you have the Roma and the Sinti. So you have different groups who are often persecuted. You also have a main group. Now, if you want to have recognition about the persecution of minorities, because that's where your question was leading, it is difficult. Recognition of genocide is very, very, very hard. So let me be very blunt and direct about that. I think you are in a better position, and then I'm leading also to an answer of you, Sito, about, I think you are in a better position if you talk about human rights abuses and violations. I think you can make a stronger legal case in this scenario. That said, however, yes, of course, Hindus, Buddhists are more persecuted. And that's why Genocide Watch is focusing on the Chittagong Hills tracks, right? They're really focusing on one area. And that's because genocide is so hard to prove if you look at it globally. So I hope that answers your questions a bit, but it's a very uphill fight. Yeah, there's definitely a case to be made. Yeah, now there is definitely a case to be made, but like I tried to explain in the rest that I made earlier, what's going to be very hard to do is that if you look at the genocide, yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah, I agree, and but at the same time, I'm kind of careful at the same time because I've been in many discussions about this. I've even been to Yerevan in Armenia, and the thing is that even though numbers count, in the end, when you look at the Genocide Convention, what really counts is the definition of genocide and all the aspects of genocide. So is there a machinery behind it? Has it been organized? So spontaneous act, as I tried to explain with when you talk about creeping genocide, is not popular accepted, right? So here you come already to a very big uphill fight. So I'm just trying to be very honest. So it's very difficult. I agree, there is definitely a form of ethnic cleansing, and I think you have a better case in ethnic cleansing than genocide.
Thank you very much. Let me conclude this round with making two remarks. The first remark would be that I have to join Dr. Holslag when it comes to numbers. Genocide is not defined by the number of casualties. It can be genocidal when it is only a relatively small number. It has to do with intent, it has to do with state involvement, it has to do with many aspects. It's not the number by itself that defines whether or not it is a genocide. And the second is the remark that Dr. Holslag made, that the Armenian genocide is not recognized. It is not recognized by the United Nations, but fortunately it is recognized by various countries, also by the Dutch Parliament. And I think that political recognition is of great importance. And therefore, I think that if the Netherlands or any other country, the United States is under debate in the United States by law, a bipartisan law, recognizing the Armenian genocide. So if that is adopted by a parliament, then that is an important political step. So coming from political recognition to universal recognition by the United States, the United Nations, is an important way to go forward. So I applaud every country, every parliament that recognizes the Armenian genocide or the 1971 genocide of Bangladesh. That being said, I would like to thank the gentlemen of our esteemed panel. Please, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. We will now have our coffee break, a longer coffee break, and then we will back for our second panel. Thank you very much.
How Dr. Yunus assured the world and the nation of reform scheme where inclusivity and equality, let alone fundamental human rights, would be upheld. All these tall claims were made during a speech by Yunus on August 8th upon his return to Bangladesh before taking oath as interim head without winning any election. And from UN to other international rights bodies also backed Yunus' regime and the quest for so-called reform process unanimously. International human rights activists organizations, politicians, lawyers, journalists raised their concern from the very beginning, but Yunus's interim government didn't pay attention to this concern.
Given the current instability in Bangladesh and since the departure of the former Prime Minister in August, this is a moment of deep concern. Many governments are condemning the violence and calling for peace and law and order to be restored.
But 7 months under the rain, a reality check reveals just the opposite scenario, with law and order when totally collapsed, while the judiciary and law enforcement have been totally weaponized. Mob rule has become the rule, with lynching, communal violence, alongside other acts of terror like arson, looting, rape, curb on freedom of movement for women and girls roiled the nation. Let's take a look at how rights abuses exacerbated in the country, extrajudicial killing and custodial death by law enforcement. Since August 5th, at the behest of Bangladesh Army, joint forces have been deployed. Troops are also empowered with magistracy power and following our monthly status of killing under law enforcement. Atrocities against minorities.
We have a responsibility because we enable Bangladesh to be free and independent. Now, whatever the change of government has been in Bangladesh, it cannot be acceptable that religious minorities are persecuted in this way.
Attacks on followers of Sufis and shrines. Islamists inciting violence against minorities, in stark contrast to government's narrative on ruling out communal line over attacks against minorities. BBC journalist laid bare how Islamists, released after August 5th, are inciting ongoing spate of violence, targeting all minority communities including Hindus. 2 episodes in BBC radio service brings to light the stark involvement of Islamists in fomenting attacks against minorities. Yunus's sweeping indemnity for mass killing of cops, citizens, and violent attacks on police stations by loyalists. In contrast to the pledge to ensure justice, an order issued on October 14th, 2024 by Yunus reads, "Students and citizens who put forth all efforts to make this uprising successful will not face prosecution, arrest, or harassment for their acts between July 15th and August 8th. Emboldened at the indemnity, advocates of Yunus regime, radical Islamists and coordinators from student against discrimination platforms publicly glorified the killing spree of cops and planned destruction of key public offices as part of a violent campaign to bring down Awami League.
যদি মেট্রো রেলে আগুন না দেওয়া হতো, যদি পুলিশদেরকে না মারা হতো, তাহলে বিপ্লবটা এত সহজেই অর্জিত হতো না। কিংবা
পুলিশের ফায়ারিং এ কম লাগছে, সিভিলিয়ান ড্রেসে হাতের 7.62 আপনারা নিয়ে দেখছেন।
বৈষম্য বিরোধী আন্দোলনে সিরাজগঞ্জের এনায়েতপুরে যদি 15 জন পুলিশ নিহত না হতো, বাংলাদেশের পুলিশের মেরুদণ্ড ভাঙত না।
Despite such public admission of killing, the decree justifying no legal action against violence perpetrated by supporters of Yunus has been likened by rights activists as an act of widespread indemnity granted for perpetrators who killed police, minorities, citizens affiliated with Awami League, aimed to bring Yunus in power and solidify his grip on power. No justice for killing of at least 318 people under Yunus regime. Ayin O Shalish Kendro, a leading human rights organization, reported. Massacre of Awami League activists. At least 171 citizens were reportedly killed in form of lynching, arson, and other forms of violence. According to accounts of family members, tens of thousands of party activists and leaders in almost each unit of 4,573 union, in all the 64 districts across the country, subjected to physical attacks, and their houses and business were looted and vandalized. Hundreds of activists are feared, killed as their whereabouts are unknown for months. Due to impunity for killing of Awami League leaders and activists, there has been no let-up in the extrajudicial killing spree even after 6 months. Rather, the cycle of vengeance and erosion of rights only compounded. Violence against women. Safety of female population, from clothing to workplace and movement, under siege and culture of impunity reigns supreme. Death of freedom of press. The claim of Dr. Yunus to uphold freedom of press emerged out as biggest hoax in 6 months, as not only journalists are suppressed with meticulous design of false lawsuits, arbitrary arrests, unlawful incarceration, but also a record number of headquarters of media outlets came under attacks. Since August 5th, offices of at least 19 media outlets are torched and vandalized, highest since the country's history, according to DW Bangla Service. Mass arrests and arbitrary detention, brutal crackdown. At least 13,540 people were subjected to mass arrests and arbitrary detention from August 2024 till January 2025. In 20 days of February, at least 12,500 were detained in political cases. No justice in court. Victims of mass arrests denied of legal rights. Reports reveal critics of Yunus regime, who have been subjected to mass arrests, were attacked inside court premises on a regular basis. Denial of academic rights of students. Over the space of last 6 months, tens of thousands of students who are opposed to Yunus and his allies were attacked inside campuses, even barred from attending examinations, denied of academic rights, and their certificates have been cancelled by university authorities. Only because of political belief or alignment with Awami League's student wing, scores of students were murdered, abducted from their home, and even thrown behind the bars. Now the questions over Yunus gaining undue privileges to expand business empire. How Dr. Yunus assured the world and the nation of reform scheme where inclusivity and equality, let alone fundamental human rights, would be upheld. All these tall claims were made during a speech by Yunus on August 8th upon his return to Bangladesh before taking oath as interim head without winning any election. And from UN to other international rights bodies also backed Yunus regime and the quest for so-called reform process unanimously. International human rights activists, organizations, politicians, lawyers, journalists raised their concern from the very beginning, but Yunus's interim government didn't pay attention to this concern.
Given the current instability in Bangladesh and since the departure of the former Prime Minister in August, this is a moment of deep concern. Many governments are condemning the violence and calling for peace and law and order to be restored.
But 7 months under the reign, a reality check reveals just the opposite scenario, with law and order went totally collapsed, while the judiciary and law enforcement have been totally weaponized. Mob rule has become the rule, with lynching, communal violence, alongside other acts of terror like arson, looting, rape, curb on freedom of movement for women and girls roiled the nation. Let's take a look at how rights abuses exacerbated in the country, extrajudicial killing and custodial death by law enforcement. Since August 5th, at the behest of Bangladesh Army, joint forces have been deployed. Troops are also empowered with magistracy power and following our monthly status of killing under law enforcement. Atrocities against minorities.
We have a responsibility because we enable Bangladesh to be free and independent. Now, whatever the change of government has been in Bangladesh, it cannot be acceptable that religious minorities are persecuted in this way.
Attacks on followers of Sufis and